everyone, my name is Austin and this is Garrod's Garage. So I am into off-road fabrication, designing parts, making things from scratch, taking them apart, figuring out how they all go back together. I've always enjoyed this type of work. This is sort of just a happy coincidence that I fell into this hobby. And my wife noticed that I like making sort of long form Instagram posts and informative storylines. So she suggested, hey, why don't you take some of that information and put it into a long form YouTube video? I feel a little silly giving it a go, but she went ahead and set up all of the email and the account, and the least I can do is give it a try and see if it's something that I like and see if there's anybody who likes watching what I do out here. Whether this is something I stick with or not, I will always continue to be in the garage. So if at the very least I can get a couple of new friends and contacts in the industry, then I think this was a worthwhile endeavor. A little bit about me. Nothing you're gonna see on this channel is from the perspective of a professional. I am a home gamer through and through. Although I have an engineering degree, I got a civil engineering degree from the University of Washington. Everything that you're seeing here is just trades that I've picked up from practice, friends, and other things I've seen on YouTube or Instagram. And I'm hoping to kind of share the same thing. So if you see something, a technique that you've never seen before, or maybe an approach to problem solving that you can apply to yourself, that's kind of the goal of this channel. Is I'm going to show you the things that I already enjoy doing. I enjoy explaining how things work. I enjoy explaining my thought process and problem solving techniques, and hopefully there's a few of you who enjoy watching and I can keep doing these. So this is probably not the best point in the build to start a video, but let's do a little walk around of what I've got behind me. So this is my 1990 Toyota 4Runner. This was my first vehicle. My parents got it for me when I was 16 and it was bone stock. The story as it goes is I had never turned a wrench, never into fabricating. All of this was something that I happened into because when I was 16, I got into a rear end accident with a Subaru because I was, I'm sure, dinking around on my phone or looking at the stereo or something stupid like 16-year-olds do. And my punishment was A, I was grounded, which fair, but B, I had to fix the front end myself. So my truck wasn't totaled, but fenders were smushed, hood was smushed, core support was smushed. So I just used some innovation, pulled the front end out as best I could, hammered out the fenders, hammered out the bumper, and decided, you know, this is pretty fun, you know? Make a plan in your head and figure out a way to get it done, and it all spiraled from there. I was able to talk one of my friends into figuring out what this off-roading thing is about, and of course I started with a bracket lift, rough country, off-the-shelf lift like I think everybody else does, and I think I've tried just about every rendition for this truck that is available. So I did the Toyota axles, you know, 35s, chromoly shafts, built it up from there. Once I got to the limit of Toyota axles and started breaking stuff, you know, I wanted 40s, wanted to run some harder trails. Being up here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm in Washington State. We've got some pretty gnarly trails up here. So then I went and found a pair of 1-ton axles. So right now it's got the Kingpin GM Dana 60 in the front, 14 bolt in the rear. Was still on leaf springs. Never fully fixed the core support from that original accident I told you about 10 years ago. Just I got a wild hair and decided, you know what, we're gonna link it. So that's what we're doing. You know, I'm kind of just fixing everything that never got done, the things that have been on the list for basically forever. So front halved it, doing a tube front end, gonna fit the fender skins back on, kind of rebuilding everything the way that it should have been from the get-go. But I mean, with a lot of things, you don't have the skill set to do it the right way at the beginning, right? So every rendition, I don't regret it. I think it was, I mean, there's no other way I could have learned how to do this without just giving it a go and figuring out what I could do with the tools I had at the time. Yeah, so welds have got a lot better. The tools at my disposal have gotten a lot better, and my knowledge has gotten a lot better. So it's kind of where we're at. This is a 3.4 swapped motor. I kept the 3.0 transmission. I've got Toyota dual transfer cases, and we already talked about the axles. Those have, I don't remember, 513s, I think, if memory serves correct. The front is a Detroit, the rear is an ARB, and that's been a pretty good setup for me, so none of that's changing. But on the front here, I've got, let me move this. This was a welding guard. Gotta protect that shiny steel surface. So TMR truss, built my own ram skid. I've got the PSC big boy 8-inch throw. I think it's 2 3/4 inch diameter, so pretty big ram for packaging purposes. The new trail gear bump stops, and then over here on the bench we've got Fox 2.0 coilovers, remote reservoir. That's all gonna get fit up here. Disregard the wiring disaster. That is going to get fixed up soon. I've got a little bit more tube work to do, and that's kind of what drew me to turn the camera on. Where we're at now is I've got these upper shock mounts done, and the kind of the main structure for the front end done. And now we're doing the filler tubes, which are always, the main structure feels like it would be the hardest part, but the filler tubes are what take me the longest, because I really want to avoid this ending up looking like a jungle gym. So I'm trying to only add tubes that I need, and without having a shock hoop, I have to be pretty smart about the way that I terminate this all to the frame and make sure that it's triangulated and strong. But yeah, the other unique thing that I did is to try to keep the link geometry a little bit better. I took a page out of a Jeep book and I'm building a subframe. So this will, when it's done, extend back, have a similar hoop down there, and then get the rear 4-link done the same way. And it'll be all triangulated in between with a nice flat skid there. So you can just ride this flat link all the way to the flat belly, all the way through the back link. Hopefully it'll work. I originally put this tube in because it grabs the crossover pipe and makes sure that it terminates to the frame, kind of transferring forces the correct way. But 90% of off-roading is looking cool, and I absolutely hate how this looks. The fit up is really good, but just when you're standing from the side, this is a tube that you'll be able to see through the wheel well. And with this front end being perfectly vertical and this tube having a slight lean to it, I don't like it. And it makes packaging steering on the opposite side about impossible. So we're taking those out, bringing it around to the other side. And we're gonna add some triangulation. So we're gonna go from here to the crossover tube and from here back to the frame. And we'll see if we like that better. I'll show you some things that I do for mocking up tubes to get an idea before I go ahead and waste any more tube than I already have. So before I go notching a bunch of tubes and committing to another plan, ultimately wasting more tube, I need to do a better job of making sure that I'm accounting for space for follow-on items that need to go kind of in the same vicinity. So in this case, my orbital. I mounted that vertical tube and had no place to put the orbital and no way to route the steering column. So to alleviate that, I have modeled and printed a plastic orbital valve. So this weighs like a pound. So I can easily move this around, clamp it in place. And then I cut and bent this bracket. Just a pretty basic orbital mount. So I'm gonna get that mocked up in place, and then I'll start holding some tubes up and we'll see what we can make fit. So right out of the gate, I failed to record myself mocking up that orbital, but take my word for it, I'm fairly confident that with these 2 new tubes installed, I'll have a much easier time mounting my orbital and routing my steering column. So what you're seeing me do here, I took my mock-up scrap tube and an angle finder just to throw it up on the truck where I think it's going to go and get a rough shot at what that notching angle is going to be. Of course, it's a pretty steep angle, almost like 50 degrees here, so my shallow hole saw wasn't getting all the way through, so quick nip with the angle grinder got me to the end. Very similar to what we did on the first end, I'm going to go back over to the truck with my angle finder, throw it back up on the tubes, and try to get another rough estimate of what I think the notch angle is going to be.
35 degrees.
I say 35 degrees, but it ended up being 55 degrees because you have to subtract that from 90, smart guy. The unfortunate reality about the next step is I don't have any secret pro tips to make this any more fun. I just take the tube, bring it over to the truck with a paint pen, mark what needs to be trimmed, bring it back to the bench, grind it until I think it's going to fit, test it, and repeat until it fits the way that I want it to. So this clip was originally me in the garage talking about how I thought the day had gone, but I wanted to do a voiceover instead so I could be a little bit more articulate about some of the points I wanted to make. So here you can see the fit up of the 2 tubes I've been showing. I really like this method for utilizing the scrap tube because it allows you to get the copes exactly perfect and oriented to each other how you want them to be without risking wasting any actual tube at the cost of approximately $7 a foot or more, depending on where you're living. I know this is a little bit more time spent up front, but again, if you overshoot how much you take off of an actual piece of tube, then you've trashed that tube, wasted the money, and now you have to spend the time to do it again anyways. This way, you have completely repeatable measurements that you can then transfer to your official piece of tube, and then you can take those templates that you copy of each cope, flip them inside out, and wrap them around the tube for the passenger side, effectively mirroring all of the work you've already done for this piece instead of having to recreate the wheel. And that officially marks the end of all the guesswork. So next you're going to take your 2 scrap pieces on the template, make sure that they're tacked to the alignment sleeve to hold the orientation. Then I'm going to transfer it to the bench and use my little 3D printed sliding jig to mark the outermost horizontal edges of that template tube. We'll later use these for reference. Then you're going to wrap your paper jig around the end of the tube and cut it to match the copes that you like. And make sure to transfer the alignment lines onto the paper template. We're going to need to be able to line those back up once we transfer these to the final tube. The last thing you'll need is the measurement between each edge of the paper template. And then you can use those measurements, the alignment lines, put the paper templates onto your final tube, and notch it to match. Should fit perfectly. All right, I need to go inside and eat, but there you have it. 2 tubes mocked up using my scrap technique, I guess we'll call it. That leaves me, because of the angle here, that leaves me just enough room to squeeze my steering by it. And then might need to add a heim here to redirect this, but then there should be space here for an orbital to go somewhere. So I think that was worth it. I think it looks better than the tube on the opposite side that looks like it's trying too hard to be vertical. And this should be a lot stronger. Thank you so much to the 3 people who stuck around. My name is Austin Garrod. This is Garrod Garage. And if you feel like giving me a chance, maybe hit that like or subscribe button. I don't know if I can promise I'll get better, but I can promise that I'll try.